Welcome to CityWise. I'm your host, Tiana Stevens. CityWise is produced by the City of Rochester to shine a spotlight on city living at its best. The special event in Rochester is opening the gates to classical music, celebrating diversity and excellence with 6 days of performances and dozens of musicians. The Gateways Music Festival is just a few weeks away, and joining us now to tell us all about it is Barbara Jones, co-chair of the Gateways Music Festival Planning Committee, along with Dr. Paul Burgett, Vice President of the University of Rochester and Gateways board member and presenter at this year's event. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us, Tiana.
So 2015 marks 22 years of the festival's founding. How did this come about?
Well, it's been 20 years in Rochester. It had its founding in Winston-Salem, North Carolina by Armenta Hummings. Armenta Adams Hummings is a distinguished pianist who had an international piano career, and so she started the festival, a Gateways Festival, in an attempt to bring musicians of African descent together to celebrate and perform classical music. Mm-hmm. The Eastman School of Music in 1995 invited her to bring the festival to Rochester, and she did, and it's been here ever since and is held every other year. So this is our 20th year for the festival in Rochester.
20 years in Rochester. Mm-hmm. What's the mission of the Gateways Music Festival?
We actually have 3 missions, and the first one is to increase the performance opportunities for musicians of African descent. Mm-hmm. The second one is we want to give them an opportunity to network together. Many of these musicians are solo in their particular orchestra, philharmonic, their symphony, and so they come together at the festival to really network and play with other musicians of African descent. Mm-hmm. And then the third mission is to really act as role models for young musicians of all ethnic background, to encourage them to become involved in classical music. So those are the 3 parts of our mission.
Dr. Burgett, how important as a musician is networking, and as a young musician, how important is that to their career?
It's essential. It is not surprising that many of the musicians, almost 100 musicians of African descent, will descend on Rochester on August the 10th and 11th, and many of them already know one another because they have gone to the same schools. Wow. They've gone to places like the Eastman School and like the University of Michigan, and they play together. So there's the networking process doesn't begin with the Gateways Festival. It's been going on, and many of the people who are coming to the 2015 to this festival have been here before. So they're old time, they're veterans of Gateways, the Gateways Music Festival. So but in answer to your question, networking is very, very important because they alert one another to where there are opportunities. They also, and this shouldn't be lost, they perform together. At the end of the day, it's about the music. At the end of the day, it's about the music, playing the music and playing the music for an audience, and that is critically important. And another piece of this that's important as well is that there's a lot of music in the classical literature that is composed by musicians of African descent, going all the way back to the 18th century, right up to the 20th century. And so the Gateways Festival has always included as part of the repertoire musicians, composers of African descent, and this Gateways Festival will be no different.
Barbara, what's the significance of the word Gateways?
Gateways seems to us what it means is the opportunity to have accessibility to classical music. We believe that that is something that should be accessible to everyone in the community. And a lot of times when you talk about accessibility, people really talk about maybe there's some physical limitations. We don't mean that. We mean that Gateways Music Festival really provides an opportunity for everyone in the community to have an opportunity to experience classical music without any barriers. It doesn't have to be a barrier in terms of the price of a ticket. All of the festival events are free. They're open to the public. It doesn't mean that you have to go to one particular place. The festival will take place throughout the community of Rochester. in a number of different locations, whether it's in schools, churches, theaters, nursing homes, small businesses. There are just a variety of different places. And so people have the ability to say, where am I most comfortable? I will go there and I will have an opportunity to be exposed to classical music performed by musicians of African descent. So we use gateways to say that is an opening to classical music for everyone within the community.
And City Hall is another venue again this year. What are some of the other specific venues that people would be familiar with, and maybe some that they aren't familiar with?
We actually start out, the festival runs from August 11th through the 16th. The first event actually takes place on Wednesday the 12th. We will have the piano recital at Hatch Hall, which is part of the Eastman School of Music. And then on the Thursday, we have a chamber music concert that takes place at Mount Olivet Baptist Church on Adams Street. And then Friday, we have our youth concert that takes place at City Hall. And then Saturday, we actually have two events that take place at Hochstein. Paul Brigette is actually going to do a pre-concert conversation when he's going to talk about the role of black women as composers in classical music, and then that's going to be followed by another chamber music orchestra at Hochstein. And then on Sunday afternoon at 4 o'clock at Eastman Theater, we have the full orchestra concert. Friday evening and Sunday morning, we have little what we call chamber music in the homes and Sunday morning chamber music, where small groups of musicians will actually go to the homes, the private homes of individuals on Friday evening, and then also on Sunday morning they will go to a number of different churches and they will actually perform there. So once again, the festival takes place in such a wide variety of locations and venues that literally just about everyone in the community will have an opportunity to find their favorite venue, go there, and voila, you will find Gateways Music Festival.
What type of audience do you hope comes out to the venues?
An eclectic audience. What we're hoping is that it will draw and attract people who may never have been to a concert of classical music before. We're hoping that it attracts people, great lovers of music, who may go to classical music concerts all the time, but never have been to concerts that program some of what we're going to be programming. I will mention, to pick up on what Barbara has said, that women composers generally have had a difficult time to gain favor with performing ensembles and audiences, and there are some absolutely brilliant women composers, notably Florence Price. And I mentioned Florence Beatrice Price because the Sunday afternoon concert will feature her Symphony No. 1 in E minor, which won her the Wanamaker Prize in Chicago. And she is in the same category with people like William Grant Still, whose music we performed, or William Levy Dawson, whose music we performed. It's time to be sure that we include women as well as men in our performances.
And the youth concert is an important component.
Right.
What do you say to young musicians who are thinking of a career in classical music? Maybe they're not sure.
Well, the youth concert, the youth showcase we call it, will happen at City Hall, and it will probably include people from the ages of 4 or 5 to novice adults, and so the level of achievement will vary, but it's all inspiring. I mean, it's very inspiring to see even the tiniest of tots play to people who are just on the verge of careers, performing careers in music. And so the audiences, I MC that particular event, and the audiences are always wildly enthusiastic at what they hear, because the young people bring a kind of energy and verve to the performances that's exciting.
But I think an important message also that we deliver when we talk about Gateways Music Festival and our audiences is we really want the audience to recognize that classical music is for everyone. We talk about Gateways Music Festival celebrating classical music from for musicians of African descent. And so we try to make sure that when we talk about young people, we want to make sure that they are able to see musicians who look like them. If you are a young person and you are interested in playing the oboe, the question is, good God, is there anyone else that looks like me that does that? You come to Gateways Music Festival and you find out that that is in fact the case, that there are other musicians who have chosen that particular instrument that they wanted to develop this talent and this skill with, and that begins to give young people an opportunity to say, you know, this is something that is possible for me, that classical music is not something that is just for older white audiences, which I think happens to be a negative perspective. That's what most people want to think and say, but if you will come to a Gateways Music Festival event, you will see that the audiences are very diverse. We hold them in a variety of different locations because we do want to encourage people who perhaps are not comfortable being in a more established setting for classical music because they think it doesn't mean that I'm welcome. It's not someplace I've been to before. We wanted to be able to open up the number of places and the opportunity for people throughout the community to come and see that classical music can be embracing of the total community on the stage as well as in our audience.
Sure. Now you brought a clip of some of the performances of years past, and so let's just take a look at that, give the audience an idea of what to expect from the Gateways Music Festival. Beautiful. And I did notice that our own RPO trumpet player, Herb Smith,
That's right.
is part of it. How do local performers have a role in Gateways Music Festival? What's the benefit for them?
I think from the point of view of the local musicians, it gives them also an opportunity to be exposed to a couple of things. One, to be exposed to other musicians who they may not be aware of in terms of their skill and their talent, to be able to see them perform. And I think the second thing is the repertoire. As Paul had said earlier, as part of the Gateways Festival, we always have a repertoire that includes works of African American composers of African descent. And a lot of times the more traditional orchestras, more traditional philharmonic symphonies don't often play that repertoire. And so I think the local musicians have an opportunity to see that, to experience that, and to realize, oh, there is a greater world out there in terms of the repertoire that they themselves can begin to listen to and they can also begin to play. So it's beneficial for the musicians that come, but also for the local musicians as well.
And I will say that there is a great sense of camaraderie that happens when all of these musicians come together. And so for our local musicians like Herb Smith, for the trumpet section of the RPO, for example, he will see Lenny Foy, who doesn't live in Rochester, but the two know each other. They're both trumpet players. They were both graduates of the Eastman School. So seeing one another coming together, it's like a coming home, actually. It's a family that comes back together. even if people didn't spend any time in Rochester, all of these musicians come together. They know who one another is, and there's a kind of camaraderie and family quality to it, which I think only enhances the experience, including the musical performances.
Now, you mentioned almost 100 musicians from all over the country.
Correct.
Canada, so beyond.
Right.
Exactly. It's international at this point.
International.
Yeah.
Who are some of your favorites that are coming? Who are you looking forward to see?
Well, we actually have 2 guest artists that will be participating this year. Anthony McGill will be, he is the principal clarinet for the New York Philharmonic, and he is going to be performing with the orchestra on the Sunday program at the Eastman Theater. And then we are doubly thrilled that we're going to have a young group of instrumentalists, Harlem Quartet. There are 4 young instrumentalists, 2 violinists, a violist, and a cellist, and they're actually going to be performing Thursday evening at Mount Olivet Baptist Church, as well as Saturday evening at Hochstein. And so we're actually very thrilled to have both of them. We don't typically have the opportunity to have 2 guest artists, and we don't always have the opportunity to have someone such as Anthony McGill, who was just recently named principal with the New York Philharmonic, and then also the Harlem Quartet. This is a group of young, it's a Grammy Award-winning quartet. It's a group of young musicians, and we were just talking about the young people. We want to set role models for them so they can see what it means to be a musician, a young musician, and so we think that's going to add a nice balance to our program, and so we are thrilled to have the 2 of those guest artists on our program this year.
And it's important to piggyback on what Barbara has said. The festival has grown. It has grown in number, and it's also grown in quality. And so we are attracting attention nationally, and now because of Canada, we can say internationally.
Internationally as well.
And so what any organization should aspire to is to aim high, and then to aim higher. And that has happened with the Gateways Festival. And so what we're seeing now is attention being paid to the festival and participation in the festival by performers at the highest world-class level. And we're very, very pleased, and that's what we wanted. But at the same time, being mindful of our commitment to the community at all levels, because we want to bring all people along with us, and we want the rising waters to raise all boats.
What has the community reaction been to the Gateways Music Festival?
Oh, it has been phenomenal. Phenomenal on actually all levels, in terms of attendance, in terms of we are a non-profit organization, totally volunteer. We have no paid staff. And so we really rely upon donations to support the organization, because all of the concerts are free. So the Rochester community has been extremely generous in terms of donations that they've made to Gateways. They have been wowed over by the quality of the repertoire. They've had their arms open to us by inviting us into their churches on Sunday morning for the musicians to perform and play there. We have had a number of volunteers that come from the community to come and offer their time with us. At every concert, we actually have an audience survey where we ask the audience, tell us about your experience. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? Was this your first time with classical music? Are you exposed to other types of classical music? Do you know Gateways? What do you think about us? What sort of advice would you give us? And all of the responses are always extremely positive. I would say that what the Rochester community would love us to be able to do, that we're not quite able to do yet, they would love to have Gateways Music Festival every year as opposed to every other year. And right now we just don't have the finances to do that. But when the day comes when we can say we have the financial wherewithal to do that, the community will just be overwhelmed, because that's what they've been asking us for all along.
Right. Finally, what do you hope that the audience will come away with by attending?
First of all, that they will have heard wonderful musical performances. You will always hear musicians say their first priority is giving a wonderful performance, a performance that is satisfying and pleasing to the audience. too, that the people will feel welcome, especially those for whom this may be a first-time experience.
Wonderful. I'm going to have to stop you right there. I'm so sorry, but there's plenty of information on the website at gatewaymusicfestival.org. The festival phone number is 234-2582.